cargo ship, and of course the ports, and the amount of information. As a journalist, I've written a few times about the amount of information that is actually shared between the port and the ship owner, the operator, the captain on the bridge. So that is a very dynamic development, and the ability to do so in a better way and make better use of what can be actually achieved with the technology and the data that we can extract is going to be an important and crucial area moving forward. So I'm pleased to introduce Argylis from Marine Traffic to give the opening talk on this of the last talks today. Thank you.
Hey, hello everybody. Hope you're nicely woken up and you've enjoyed the previous quite stimulating blockchain presentation. I say this because with Marine Traffic we tend to be a little bit more practical. So it's all about trust and about what blockchain has to offer, but we're looking at it from the applicability of it. And that's why today I come forward with the notion of collaboration hubs and marketplaces, and how essentially these can affect, disrupt the way that ports operate. Okay, great. So, you know, in our digital world, disruption can be understood, you know, in many different contexts. But the fact is that there are definitely many prerequisites for things to happen. Certainly, we need to be able to exchange data. A lot was discussed earlier on that topic. The notion of a point of truth, single point of truth, or multiple, at least agreeing between them points of truth, but certainly exchange data, and that leads to the question of standards. How do we standardize information so it can be exchangeable? Okay. We need to be integrating solutions. Now there is a solution for almost everything, but they don't speak between each other. We need to be working together. Alliances and thought leadership are of paramount importance in terms of thinking, and indeed change the way that our business plans operate. It was very nice to hear again, and I think it's a recurring topic in maritime nowadays. Yes, we've hired a new chief information officer, a chief digital officer, etc. People start realizing that there's a lot of value in digital, in how the data is handled and its effect. But it's not just about that, it's about how we interact with other partners in this digital domain, how we share value and we share benefits. So there's lots to talk about, and of course in this presentation I'm not going to exhaust them, but I will touch upon them briefly. The fact is that shipping is part of the whole supply chain. And again, this recurring topic of perhaps we will be superseded by the Alibabas and the Amazons comes from the fact that, well, they control the whole, well, they wish to control the whole A to B movement of cargo. We're somewhere in the middle. Perhaps they will come our way and control us too. So the question is, you know, how proactive can we be in order to maximize the value proposition that we offer in shipping. In any case, looking at it from afar, it's true that one can easily identify multiple marketplaces in shipping already as notions. So there can be such marketplaces as far as port operations are concerned, or indeed freight chartering. This is kind of a holy grail in shipping, you know, matching cargo to the vessel. There are already some efforts around identifying suppliers and services, but overall, you know, it's not going very far yet. And certainly intermodal operations feature very high again in terms of discussions. But the fact is that there's always this concept of shipping becoming integrated itself as part of a global freight marketplace. You know, we do not know where this will lead. The topic of trusted information, however, is an underlying one there, tying very nicely with what you've heard before. Okay, in terms of hubs and marketplaces then, you know, you can describe them in various abstract ways. Here's one. Essentially, it's a way of combining assets, such as ships and ports, with a cargo that is being transported, all the stakeholders that are part of the process, and the data that indeed describes what's happening. And you can ask yourself, why bother? I think the answer is, you've given it many times. Why bother adopt digital and offer online products and services? Why bother interacting with other stakeholders, fix and collaborate? And the fact is that, well, it's about driving efficiency and generating growth. And these are key drivers. So, reducing costs, improving the bottom line, applies to many of those involved, from the cargo owner, all the way to the shipping line and all the service suppliers. Generating growth, identifying opportunities, is again a driver behind using data, collaborating, becoming and entering a marketplace. And if you see successful marketplaces in other domains outside maritime, that's what you see actually happening. In terms of marketplaces, here's one I like and which is relevant to what we're discussing today. If you look at a port, I call it maritime operations marketplace. There are multiple stakeholders involved, and they interact every single minute that goes by. And the fact is that at the moment, many of these operations are happening even in an analog, manual way. Introducing platforms which can actually support these things will allow us to optimize, as we go forward, the berth-to-berth sailing, ideally across the world. It's not just about optimizing operations at your own single port, but it's about taking a whole journey from one end to the other and being able to set, define and adjust the parameters so that it happens in the most efficient way. Ultimately, it's all about coordinating the operations and services at ports, and with obvious benefits. It's about saving on costs by sailing green. It's about simplifying the way that we do our work, simply because we have information and we can control the timeline of our daily operations much more efficiently. And if anything, I've mentioned it already, the universal point of truth via blockchain or any other such implementation is essential so that we can have this shared knowledge between us. Many have been talking about it already for several years, and there have been good projects, and already our panelists later on will be representing them. This is a screenshot from the Pronto project, which is currently run at the Port of Rotterdam. The interesting bit for me is mostly, the timeline of the vessel being described at the bottom, where all the, nautical operations are being, for each one of the vessels listed above, are being described. And in this marketplace notion, what one should envisage is that, dashboards such as these with individual timelines for the operations of each ship and each berth apply for each one of the stakeholders, but from their own perspective. If you are a services supplier, trucking company, you're interested in the vessels that you're serving and in the operations which relate to your job. If you are the agent, you look at it from your perspective. If you're a shipping line, again, you're interested in the fleet of vessels, not just in a port, but in all ports in the world where you actually operate. So there are multiple perspectives within this marketplace logic around that. But the beauty of it is, once you get the information and you display it there, you can then allow the various stakeholders involved to interact with each other, and hence it becomes a collaboration hub. And once you get there, then you can start conducting financial transactions, provided that the information is trusted. So we're going back to this notion of trust. Great. Now, data. In marine traffic, and I'll show you a few practical examples in a moment of what data we work on. We're a big data company, and this is how we perceive actually the value derived out of it. At the bottom of it, what we do is we collect position vessels from all over the world, and that's we're actually collecting 8,000 data records per second. So it's a lot of information. But if you don't do anything about it, it's just loads of it and it's useless. So it sits at the very bottom of this nicely pyramid. And as soon as you start processing it, for example, generating events such as port calls, crossings, berth calls, proximity events, which relate to bunkering, to tagging, etc. Once you start doing that, then you have generated value. The more you add in the processing of your events, i.e. by constructing reports or actionable reports, the more value you give to your users, to the people that make use. And really, the notion of collaboration is possible once you start combining data from multiple sources and you bring them together onto a platform and allow people, as I mentioned before, to actually collaborate with each other, interact, fix their work. Anyway, in marine traffic, we have this ambition of we actually actively work towards becoming a marketplace in the maritime world for the very simple reason that we've been there for a long time. Well, long in digital terms, it's only 10 years. But we are a trusted source of data. Indeed, we crowdsource a lot of data. We've got global coverage. Our technology is fully modular. We do have this global penetration, and really there is adequate demand around it. So moving on, just to quantify this, and now I'm closing slowly but surely with some pictures and some key facts. On marine traffic, we've got 500,000 people on the website every day. It's about 6.5 million every month. More than 1 million registered users. So it's already a big fraction of the maritime community and amateurs who are using us, and hence this marketplace development strategy that we've got. The data that we collect, just for your reference, amounts to about 180,000 vessels per day. And we've been archiving since 2009. We track where ships have been, but we also forecast where ships will go to and the path that they will take on. As I mentioned, we track events in real time, and events can be sophisticated based upon proximity or other algorithms. So here are some examples of bunkering and piloting events. And what is important is that once you start looking at the details of things, so here is a berth, for instance, at Headland Port, you can start understanding operational parameters of assets all over the world simply by observation. So in this particular case, for that berth, we're plotting restrictions at that berth simply by looking at the statistics of vessels that have been there. So in this particular case, we're looking at the maximum draft, which is at 15.5 meters with the top chart, or the maximum length, which is about 165 meters. By knowing, the type of ships that have pulled at that berth. But what's also interesting from an operational perspective, we can also look at the time that vessels have spent at that berth, depending on their size, for instance. And here are two distributions as an example. The smaller and the larger vessels, and you see the shift in time. So between 90 and 110,000 DWT in that particular vessels tend to be there at, for 27 plus or minus 3 hours, whereas larger vessels, they tend to spend 3 hours longer. So why do we care? We care because, well, if you know nothing else about it, you can use such information in order to derive estimate time of departure from that particular place. So all this falls in very nicely when you're trying to build a platform which provides people with intelligence about what's going to happen in the near future. Okay, and you can take action around that. Okay, good. So going forward, I think it must have been evident from all sessions here that really thought leadership, yes, there is plenty. We do need initiative and actions. In this context, oh wait, I'm missing a slide. Yeah, sorry, I'm missing a slide. In this context, then, what we do like, it would not change, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll just say it verbally. In this context, what we do like is some work that has been happening through, led by Rotterdam and the International Harbour Masters Association and the UK Hydrographic Office on standards about describing ports as assets. And they've gone a long way. They've already published the first set of standards, and Ben can talk more about it. You can ask him later on in the panel. The beauty of it is that, if you want to build these applications, which will be global, we need, as it was actually mentioned earlier on too, we need an identifier for every single asset that we've got in the world. So for the ships, for the ports, for the berths, anything, for actually the waterway between pilot station and any berth, we need to be able to describe it with an ID. Once you've got that, then you can build services on top of that. Okay, unless you have it, things are not possible. So in this context, Marine Traffic will actually push this standard forward as they go on publishing it, trying to disseminate the information, essentially encouraging other ports to adopt it. Indeed, there are ports in this context who are already part of it. So I'll stop here. Thanks very much.
If I could ask our panelists to come up, because we've got three representatives from the port industry now to talk about this, and the aspect of standards, the discussions around standards and trust has been very key to a lot of the things that we've been talking about over the course of these 3 days in the disruptive talks. And I'm pleased that we've got here the Director of Nautical Operations from the Port of Rotterdam, that's Ben van Scherpenzeel. Michael Lind represents the Port CDM project, where CDM stands for Collective Decision Making, which is kind of what you were alluding to there as well. And of course, we've got Trond Andersen, Manager of Maritime Department at the Port of Stavanger, here as well. A lot of that presentation was around the development of the being able to communicate the right stuff at the right time. And we saw that example from the Port of Rotterdam. We're talking of the Pronto project, I think, wasn't it? I've been in and out of the Port of Rotterdam a few times when I was at sea. I know it's a very complex area to sail in and out, and this is long before a lot of this technology was in. How important is it then from a port perspective, to really know what's going on with the vessels?
Well, in the end, it is even more important that our business partners of the port, being the traders, charterers, shipping lines, know what is in the port. So before they close the business contracts for the cargo or they charter the vessel, it is very important for them to have an in-depth understanding about the maximum size of the vessel, when the berth will be available, etc. And that information to be communicated to them in a way that they can base their decision on it. So if you talk, for example, about the maximum draft alongside, they must know exactly, is this in salt water, fresh water, with or without nutrients, etc., etc. It is the starting point of doing business at the port. The size of the vessel, very important for your charter party, clauses in your party. And when we talk about berthing windows, can we relay that information in such a way that
picture that Taggeris put up showed that there was a, put them into sort of areas and not customers here, but they've all got different needs, they've all got different bits of information they're going to need. Are you able to then have that kind of conversation with them and say, right, this is the data we can give you? Or is it very much about finding out what it is they need and what they can do? I'm just thinking about the way the question goes to, does it go to the ports, your customers, this is what we can give you, or is it, oh, this is what they need?
This is really about what they need. So there was a call for action from Maersk Line, followed by Shell, BP, etc. We need this minimum of information to run our business. So we, of course, it is very easy to get lost and do not have a precise scope of your project. So we identified with the 5 major shipping lines and the 5 major ports what is the minimum information that needs to be out there to address your business contracts and to run your fleet in an efficient manner from port to port. So once we have addressed that minimum of information and the standards that go with it, then we can do business port to port in an efficient manner.
You mentioned Taggeris having the International Association of Harbour, a sort of level of standards of, what did you mean by that? Standards so that the nomenclature of the system can be standardized? Or is it a level of standards within, this is the quality of the data?
It starts with functional definitions. So if we talk about basic things like a tidal window, what is a tidal window? Is it a tidal window due to the vertical tide or the horizontal tide? If we express it, is it in hours or in meters per second, whatever. But basic elements of restrictions in the port, maximum sizes in the port, and the timing of the vessel, we must have first a functional definition, what is the name of it? And once we have addressed functional definitions, okay, the next step is to have data definitions and data formats to exchange the data. And then of course the following step is how can we assure that the quality of that information is 100%. So information quality services like from DNV GL or Lloyds, a 9001 ISO system, that's the following step. So it goes in phases.
I've got this picture now of the port or the harbour being like the airport. We're coming to the port CDM here a little bit. So the port is like the airport. So, and you've got that functionality where you're monitoring and tracking. So that's like watching all the aircraft on the apron and on the runway and the taxiway as they're getting ready for takeoff. So you're able to do that, and you're monitoring the vessels in the same way that an airport will be monitoring the aircraft. And then it takes off, and then it's going to land at another airport, or a ship then goes to another port. And this, I think, is where the port CDM comes in a little bit, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, it is data connectivity berth to berth based on unique numbers. Does the vessel fit from one port to the other port based on data quality, and then sharing that information regarding sizes and windows berth to berth. But then again, it's really about industry standards to make sure that the industry standards we have already for charts, etc., can be used for nautical data, and the event standards that are already in place at DHL, FedEx, etc., can connect event data to vessel.
Michael, sorry.
Absolutely. The first issue is to, we have an involvement or emergence historically or the legacy-wise is that it's very different from port to port how the different actors are operating. That's for sure. What we used to say, and I'm coming from the Sea Traffic Management Consortium, is that nothing is better than the weakest link in port operations. And what we have seen very much, we are developing something called Port CDM within Sea Traffic Management, and what we see here is a lot of data non-harmonization. So, for example, a system tells what do they have in the system of, in terms of estimated time of arrival, for example, and another system tells the same thing, a third system tells the same thing, and we suddenly see that these are not harmonized at all. So for that we need a message standard, and I fully agree we need message standards, there's no question about that. The key issue, what I think that needs to be discussed a lot, is whether this disruptive world that we're coming into, if the legacy standards that we have are enough in this situation. Of course they need to be developed, the ones, for sure. What we then come to is the port-to-port collaboration, and I fully agree with Ben with that. Is as long as, especially in short-sea shipping, as long as we do not have a possibility to share that in a good way with the interfaces between the ports, then we are not going to bring such an efficiency to the ports that we want.
From the other perspective that I'd like to sort of talk about here is, and that is when you're looking at it from a port and harbour in terms of compliance and seeing that vessels are compliant and monitoring. Is that an element that would be involved with this as well?
Yeah, I definitely think so, because it's not that data is not available and so on, but it's the amount of reporting and the amount of documents and so on that's been shared by different parties and so on. So if you can structure that in a different way, and it's all about ability to share information. So if you manage to share that, if it's a port-to-port or a sharing inside the port with port actors to get full situation awareness, so I think that's the key issue. You are only as good as what you know. And I know that people know a lot in the port, but it's, they're not able to give that information forward to the ones needing it. So definitely, yeah.
And this is also an opportunity to look at the role of the master on the ship in terms of alleviating some of the shipborne paperwork as well. There's always been a lot of, in terms of evolution of the single window in one respect, but it's easing that administrative burden in that port to ship communication.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like you have a national single window, but the port can still set their own terms of reporting and so on, so that complicates everything. So if you can put it all into a national single window, and perhaps you can get mandatory reporting by automatic systems like the AES or something, then it could help on board the vessel as well.
So you're able to then sort of track things a little bit. Where does the single window fit into the port CDM?
I think in two ways actually. What we the picture that you showed before, having the port marketplace in the middle and then a lot of actors being connected. What we are doing is that we are utilizing information that come into the single window for the timestamps that are being used, and we have a multiple data source approach for ensuring data reliability. That's the way we do it, and also offer a possibility to subscribe on the information. So this actually, what we suddenly see now is that as a driver for data quality, is, for example, into the national single window or into other systems by doing this, taking this approach, both as a provision hub and also as a consumption hub.
And you talked, Chris, about standard or open source here as well, and that must be one of the fundamental aspects of what we're talking about here, having that open platform or open source information.
Yeah, I mean, when you say, open data is a bit of a misunderstood term. I don't think anyone really understands what open data is. People tend to, use open instead of free and free instead of open, But at the end of the day, data has is owned by somebody, and that somebody licenses the use of the data within a context. And a marketplace can be such a context. It's as simple as that. Well, or simple as that conceptually. It requires all the legal agreements underneath. But at the end of the day, it's about the ability to exchange data within a system under specific legal agreements in place for specific uses. And if you can identify win-win scenarios whereby essentially everybody benefits in terms of operations, becoming more efficient, minimizing their costs. Then you have such circumstances where, where it's actually possible to do it. The fact is to just drive through the change. People are not used to sharing this asset which they own. Usually it's the last thing they think about, and they think that the problems are unique. They don't realize that the other guys next door have exactly the same problems with them, or perhaps they have the mirror problems and they can solve it simply by communicating with each other. And this is what this is about. It's about encouraging the interaction, encouraging the data exchange, and really build on top of this pool of information so that things do indeed improve in terms of daily work, simple things. At the end of the day, it's about clicking a button, having your job done, instead of doing, making 10 phone calls and still not being sure whether you're going to be waiting with your tag 1 hour because something has not happened.
Is it very much a case here, I'm thinking of the Port of Rotterdam again, where as much as possible is automated, but then you've still got that human in the loop, able to monitor and see what's going on?
In the end, there's one person who is in charge of berth planning and one person in charge of a pilot station planning. So there will always be someone to grant the ship access to either the terminal berth or the pilot station. So there's always somebody in charge to say yes or no, regardless of what the data is saying.
So still that human in the loop's there making that critical yes-no decision about ship movements.
Yes.
Is that you're nodding your head there, Tron? I guess same applies in Stavanger.
Yeah, you have humans all over, but that's a good safety factor, that's for sure. But it's like if you have like a voyage plan for a vessel and the VTS can get that voyage and say, okay, your voyage is okay towards the port entrance and so on. If that information is valid to share with the VTS and so on, that's a really good effort in getting a safe entrance and so on. So I think it's, once again, it's all about sharing what you know and what you are willing to share. But I think it's crucial to get a standard settled first, because you need a standard. If not, you get something like when they started with Geographic Information Service and nothing talked to each other. So we need to get a standard so every system can talk to each other. That's crucial.
And that is a case also of being able to access the information in a timely way. I'm thinking here about some of the issues that I saw with ECDIS was it was kind of information could come onto the ECDIS, but a lot of operators, the seafarers, would look at the ECDIS, put too much information onto it, not be able to find the key information that was available. And surely that could be a port issue as well, if you're not looking at the right information at the right time.
Yeah, it's about sorting out the data that you need. There's a lot of data, but you should sort out the data that you need.
Maybe we have to make a difference between navigation information and planning information.
Yeah.
So ENC is about navigating the vessel from A to B, but for chartering, trading, loading the vessel, we need planning information. So the limitations from A to B in sizes and restrictions is a very basic, straightforward information. It's a limited set of information to determine the maximum size of the vessel and how much delay the ship will face due to tidal windows or whatever. So that's different information than ENC's.
Michael?
I fully agree, and I think if you look into other sectors, such as the aviation sector, that have based on the same information platform and data platform, they develop a number of different interfaces for pilots, for stewardess, for etc. etc. I know there was a project with IBM Bluemix that they were doing that, and you saw how this information was sorted in different ways, and essential information for that role in the process was brought forward. And I think that is, as long as we can rely on the same standard doing that, I think it's fantastic, because now we have this information source, we have true transparent interfaces that are working in that way.
But you're talking also in some of these cases about national information going from one source to the next, whether it's navigation information or the cargo information for the port to port. Are there any issues here about sharing of information here on a sort of global level between national bodies? Yeah, the reason I'm asking this is some ports are owned by the government and some are not. Are there any kind of port-related issues tied into a government-owned organisation?
Yeah, in that respect, every port is different. So, for example, the waterway, the dredging regime in the waterway, the river, might be, the information owner might be the national authority, and the dredging regime at the berth of the terminal might be the port authority, the local authority, or the terminal owner. So the information owner per section of the port might be different, and that is different again from port to port. But in the end, there's one information owner of the dredging regime to determine the maximum draft.
That must be something you've got to continually be aware of. Okay, I can imagine the worst case scenario of somebody saying, let's bring that tanker into Rotterdam. Oh, nobody told me there was a dredger going to be there. And I'm not saying that is going to happen, but that's kind of like a worst case scenario from that. Nobody told me they were doing some pylons or something there.
In the SDM project, one of the key aspects that we are talking about is the infrastructure for ensuring that the information owner is in control of the information. So if you have a port-to-port collaboration situation, there are certificates, there are access management rules that allow the previous port whether they should share information to the next port, the ship whether they should share the routes for the port, is it just segments of the routes, etc., etc. And that's one of the key things that needs to be in place. Authentication and access management needs to be combined with the standards that are being used.
Who's going to take the responsibility of ensuring that there is that platform? I think I'll go to you, Argyris, here. You're talking about Stavanger, a ship's leaving Stavanger, going to Rotterdam, coming to Sweden, whatever. There are 2 or 3 ports, they've got this information. Knowing that that ship is coming to Stavanger after Rotterdam, for example, knowing it's going to come in, making sure that information is passed. Who should be the owner of that platform?
Well, to give you...
I want Argyris there, because he's got...
I'm happy to hear your opinion. I don't know what the answer is to that one. I mean, having a so-called independent body with a mandate to run such data gathering and maintenance, etc., for the use of everybody makes sense. But who that will be, I do not know. Marine traffic, could have part of the business just doing that. The fact is that if you talk with industry players at the moment, they're not interested in buying such kind of data sets, paying loads of money, etc., etc. So people are interested in describing these, in having the description of these assets available openly for all. Okay, and probably I think the way forward is what you mentioned is the person, well, the organization which contributed to each piece of information is responsible for that piece of information. If there is something that data companies such as Marine Traffic could contribute, is an additional layer of validation in a way. I mean, the charts which I showed about maximum draft, the statistics about maximum drafts at berth, can be used to indicate differences between official figures and what's actually happening in reality, as reality is being monitored via AIS. And where discrepancies arise, a red flag ought to be raised in order to iron things out. And actually, that can be a quite important thing. I mean, organizations such as the UK AHO use AIS in order to identify where their nautical charts actually have problems.
I'm just going to ask Michael there, he was wanting to interject there a little bit.
So we run test beds in 13 ports and in Europe, and what is very clear for me is that there is not one solution. If you come to, I'm not running that in Singapore, but if you come to Singapore, it's extremely port authority driven. If you come to, for example, Port of Gothenburg, it's very much more collaborative driven. Is my conception of that situation. So the important thing is that you have a platform that can manage different types of business models being pursued in the port. in Port of Valencia, we have 7 similar parallel business models running, for example. So
slightly complex.
it's very complex, and you need to make a choice so that you do not become too business model dependent in your platform.
Right.
Yeah, where we are coming from today, there's hardly no data sharing from information owners in the port to hydrographic officers and to business partners, etc. So that's why we are focusing on existing definitions, on existing industry standard solutions, make things happen, to move things forward anyway. And an existing platform like sharing data for ENCs or event data, yeah, that would be a sort of first step to make things happen anyway. So we are really striving to use existing industry standards to move things. Of course, again, where we are now today is a very, very long way to make it happen.
But you say, is it something that you see as happening? Are more and more ports becoming interested? Are more and ports becoming engaged with this? The Port CDM Council, for example, has got a number of members, but is it mostly European, this, or are we likely to see non-Europeans? Because and I know there's, in a way, a lot of sort of common ground in some places, but not in other grounds. So is the Port CDM Council likely to be international?
Absolutely, I say. It's I mean, maritime industry is global, so the players need to be international. Otherwise, this is not going to be a push as we want. When it comes to other parties that are extremely interested, I mean, we are doing and dealing with actors in Southeast Asia in many different ways. We have very interest from South America, new ports in Europe, etc. So this is a very, very strong movement at the moment.
I'm going to wrap it up in a minute, but I'm going to ask Agos here for the sort of final word here, because in terms of the engagement of the industry on sort of developing platforms, a lot of the discussions have been in this disruptive talks have not really been about disruption per se. They've been more about and I think you used that re-evolution, a sort of evolution of the industry, the change of the industry, but that is only going to be achieved with a lot more collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, disruption is a term that is loved by investors or something, because they, you know, if there is a disruption element in the business, then the possible returns can be huge, and you can talk about the billion-dollar company or something. But at the end of the day, many people are sitting back when they hear disruption because they feel threatened. So yes, evolution or revolution is more like evolution, I think. It is more like the term. But the fact is that we do realize that each one of us on our own have some piece of the puzzle, can contribute some pieces towards a greater puzzle, and it now makes sense to push forward. So, for example, you know, when we realize that a vessel sailing through the Suez Canal going to Felixstowe, for example, in the UK, only speaks with Felixstowe once they're 6 hours away, it's a bit shocking if you think about it in terms of planning that you mentioned. But you know, why do they speak only when they're 6 hours away, trying to plan entry at the berth? You know, the berth may be occupied. They could have slowed steam, or they could have sped up. And the fact is, there's so much to be done there, but it has to be accepted by the stakeholders that there is potential there. And that's why we like, you know, to discuss possibilities of optimizing things. And the discussion on standards is really a base layer for such things to be able to operate. Once you can describe your world in a commonly understandable fashion, then you can build the applications on top of it. So overall, for us, it's and I think to everything that we heard before also, and I'm sure through this the whole disruptive series that we've had, optimizing things, making the most of the data, but it's not just a single data source, it's many data sources within, essentially service platforms.
Good. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time here. It's been a wonderful discussion, and that very nicely concludes all of the disruptive talks. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you.